California's Gold is produced in association with KCET Los Angeles and is seen statewide on California Public Television. This series is endorsed by the California Teachers Association, the California School Boards Association, and the California Library Association. Hello, everybody. I'm Huell Hauser, and here we are in Marin County in the nice little town of Tiburon. Now, you know, it doesn't get any prettier than this. Here we are right on the bay, looking across the bay at the big city of San Francisco. There goes the ferry boat right now, taking people over to town. And, you know, this town is very popular. It's not only a great place to live, but it's a great place to visit. People come here from all over the world to soak up this atmosphere. Now, we've come to Tiburon to soak up some history, because what we're going to do in just a minute is head down this road a couple of miles to a piece of land that has been there and been a very part of the history of this area of California for literally hundreds of years. And yet very few people, even the people who live right here in town, know about what went on out there over the years. Well, if you're curious as to where we're going, what we're going to see, and why that piece of land is so historic, all you have to do is come on along with us as we continue our search together here in Tiburon for California's gold. To get to this historic piece of land on the east side of the Tiburon Peninsula, we headed down a windy, wooded, two-lane road. Our destination was just a few miles away, and it was literally almost hidden away. We almost missed the turnoff. But heading downhill on the entrance road, we found ourselves literally going back in time. Good morning, I'm Huell Hauser.
Good morning, Huell. I'm Steve Bolins from the Romberg-Tiburon Center for Environmental Studies.
Boy, that's a lot of words right there.
Well,
what is the Romberg-Tiburon Center for
Environmental Studies? It's a research and education facility, part of San Francisco State University, that was established here in 1978 and has the mission of undertaking research on San Francisco Bay and the local environments, as well as training the next generation of scientists, both graduate students and undergraduate students.
Wow, that is quite a mission statement.
Well, we've got a lot going on here. We're quite proud of the place.
You have a lot of students here working on various projects, all dealing mainly with the sea, with water?
That's correct. We have both a large number of students, also faculty and other researchers working on both marine environments, coastal areas around the world, actually, but also with a particular focus to San Francisco Bay, the estuary here just in front of us.
Well, I tell you what, that's a noble cause on which you are working, and you've been here since 1978.
That's correct.
You are familiar, of course, that this spot here has a very rich history before you all got here.
Well, indeed, I've heard a little bit about that, but I'm anxious to learn more. I understand you've got some other people here to help show us some things.
That we're going to peel away the layers of history today and go back in time. We're going to see you later on in the day to kind of end all of this up, because you've got work to do, don't you?
Indeed I do, but I'll look forward to catching up with you later this afternoon.
All right.
Enjoy your day.
Head back on in the building and get to work. And we're going right over here to look at our first chapter in this wonderful history of this piece of land right here. Here to tell us about it is Howard Allen. You're on the board of this center,
right.
The Romberg Center. Yeah. You're also a local historian. Now, I've been reading some of your work. I know that in the very early days, this area was a Miwok Indian village. Then it was a Spanish land grant, which was the old Reed Ranch. But the first really interesting part of this history that caught my eye started back in the 1870s. Tell us what took place right here back in 1871.
Well, in the 1860s, the United States acquired Alaska, and at that time they found immense quantities of cod, And they became, after the gold rush, we had a cod rush.
A cod rush?
Right, and it was a very lucrative business, and a lot of traders and their schooners would go up and fish there, and they would bring it down here and have it processed. And right here in the 1870s, they built a huge development for the processing of the cod, where it was dried, pickled, dried, and brought in by boat and shipped out by boat. And it went on and became such a popular industry that there was a huge development of the cod fishing industry from San Francisco Bay, and it caused an oversupply.
A glut.
A glut.
Of cod.
A glut of cod, dried cod. And so the cod fisheries all got together and formed another Union Codfish Company and moved to Belvedere.
Now, Howard, at first glance, just looking at this, you wouldn't have any idea what in the world it is or was. It looks like just a big old concrete wall here, but it has a very interesting history to it.
You're right. After the Spanish-American War, the Navy realized that they just didn't have any coaling stations, any way of fueling their ships on the Pacific. Prior to that, they'd been only interested on the Atlantic coast. And so they decided to put a coaling station here. In 1904, they acquired this land from the cod fishery and started this very modern coaling station. And this wall is the remainder of a gantry that went all around, completely around, where they stored the coal. And it could unload ships that would come alongside over there and stockpile the coal, and at the same time they could be loading another ship with coal. So it became the fastest loading and unloading system in the world for coal. Well, that was went on and through until the 30s, but in the meanwhile, right around World War I, coaling became a thing of the past.
Obsolete.
because of most of the ships started to burn oil.
And so you didn't need a coaling station when you were burning oil.
But they had one. And when we were kids, you couldn't believe the mountain of coal that was right inside here. We would come over the hill from Tiburon and walk down here and climb that pile of coal. And on the top of this wall, there were monitors that they'd have to water the coal down to keep it down from spontaneous combustion.
Wow.
So the coal was pretty clean. We'd go home practically clean.
That is amazing that this was here. And these were, I think I've seen pictures of coal piled up over these things, weren't they?
No, in between. And they had on top of here gantries that were could travel along and pick up coal and bring it around to the ships. And so,
wow. So this was a very busy place, and for the Navy, this was a very important place.
It was, until coal became a thing of the past.
Well, it's neat that this is left. It's just a part of what was here. It was much longer than this.
Oh, it went around in the whole
perimeter.
It's
beginning to kind of fall apart. You can see the rebar coming out here. But boy, it kind of takes you back, and it allows you to remember the days that you climbed on the coal.
Right, for sure. Well, we did save this as a historical monument. There are a couple of other historical monuments, but not many left like this.
Boy, this is beautiful. All right, and on to the next one, because we've just scraped the surface on what's here. Okay, Howard, we have come about a quarter of a mile from the old coal yards. That's the Richmond Bridge over there. There's San Quentin way over there, but we are not here to talk about the bridge or San Quentin. We're here to talk about something that happened back in the 1930s right here. And this is a very interesting piece of history.
Well, the interesting thing about it was done by Roebling and Sons when they were building the Golden Gate Bridge, and they did everything by water. And so it didn't have land access, but it did have water access and deep water, which is rather rare. And they brought all the cable, all this stuff in here for building the bridge, assembled it here, and would ship it out to the bridge as it was constructed. The work that they also did here would make the vertical cables that come down from the main cable, and they do the splicing here. And
For the Golden Gate Bridge.
for the Golden Gate Bridge.
So all of this cabling for the Golden Gate Bridge, which is just kind of right around the point there,
More or less, yes.
was done right here.
It was brought in here, assembled, and stockpiled, and they had it ready, and they'd drawn the down when they needed it to build the bridge. And so a lot of the work was done here, but mainly it was for assembling material.
The cables mainly.
Yes, the cables.
And spinning the wire.
All the wires, they had a tremendous quantity. They had the wires that they spun for the main cables, and then they did the vertical cables here that were completely completed here, and then taken over and put onto the main cables. So,
and there was a big building right here. This would have been all...
They had a huge building here for doing their work. They could work all year round and in all weather. And then the rest of the stuff was just stockpiled outside here.
Wow, and all that's left now is just this big old slab of concrete to remind us of what happened here back in the 1930s. Well, I spoke too soon, because as we were walking back, Howard and I looked over here and look what we found. This is amazing, just sitting up here on the beach, all rusted and twisted around. Howard, this could very easily be part of the cable for the Golden Gate Bridge that never actually made it to the bridge itself.
It could be, but because this is where they used to load the barges. They bring up against those dolphins and load the barges for the bridge here. However, I think that this could be left over from the time that they were building submarine nets here.
Oh, wait a minute, submarine nets.
That came next.
That's the next chapter, and we're getting ready to start that. As we go to do that, let's take one more look at this big pile of wire right here, because I think this is the key to the next exciting chapter of this little place near Tiburon. It's 1940, and what happened here in 1940, Howard?
Well, the United States Navy took us over to build anti-submarine nets and to protect all the harbors. And the first one they finished was for San Francisco Bay.
Okay, submarine nets. And here are the guys right here. They were all here when it happened, weren't you?
I was.
You were here in
November of 1940.
1940?
Same time.
1940?
1940.
52, 53.
Oh, you're the baby of the crowd.
I'm the baby.
Well, fellas, tell us what happened here, because these big blocks of concrete right here, let's stand out here so we can get a good look at them. These things were very important. What were these?
Well, these were called clumps, and they held the net on the bottom, at the base of the net. And at the top there were buoys to buoy it up on top.
And when you
The
say
net.
it, what are we talking
The
about?
submarine net, anti-submarine net. And these were the anchors for the net.
And what happened here on this piece of land exactly?
Well, we had a huge concrete slab, and the nets were made from cable, almost like the bridge support. And they laid those out and then folded them up, had the gantry crane, would pick them up on the slab, take them out onto the bay, and anchor them down there until the net tenders came by and picked them up.
So the idea was that you were putting literally a net across San Francisco Bay to protect it from enemy submarines or torpedoes or?
To keep the submarines out. We never caught a submarine, to my knowledge, but
well, that's because you did such a good job. They stayed away.
But the net went across. It was a dam, like the net was a dam.
Now we just saw some little rings of wire. Were the nets made of rings that were interlocked?
The rings that you saw must have been the anti-torpedo nets. They also made those too.
We thought that probably went back to those days, because there's some still down there on the beach.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of those were made in San Quentin.
By the inmates.
By the inmates.
Which is another whole story.
Yeah.
What was it like being based over here during the war? Did you feel like you were doing a real service to the people by protecting San Francisco?
Well, at the time, we thought so, that we were called in on a national emergency, at that time. All the reserves, everybody were called in, and we just came over here to do a job, you know, building nets. Actually, we didn't know much about building nets. We just went and did it.
So you learned on the job.
On the job training, yeah.
Did you all have to literally make the nets by hand?
Manhandled. Yes, we pulled the wire off the big roll and wove that net around iron stakes that was in the slab and formed it into a net. And everywhere the net crossed, we put a 4-way clamp, clamped it together.
Wow.
It was an 8-foot mesh in the net, 8 foot.
And all of these were the anchors at the bottom. Do you think there's still some down at the bottom of the bay?
I'd be willing to bet that most of them are still there, including the net at the bottom of the bay. 'Cause what else could they do with it?
When they wanted to drop the net, at the end of the war, what'd they do? Just cut it and let it fall?
I would say that's the way it was taken care of.
I wasn't here when that
They would salvage the buoys, which were floating.
Oh, let's talk about the buoys. Come on over here, fellas, because we've got 2 buoys over here. Look at
Yeah,
this.
those are round ones. They had another style too. They called a peg top. It looked like a top that the kids spin.
Now,
When it was
I've
bigger.
seen pictures of literally thousands of these buoys over here on the bays.
Yeah, stacked up. Because it took a lot of them across that net to support that heavy net.
Does this bring back a lot of memories for you?
Oh yeah, I remember those.
Come on, let's go over and take a look at them.
So in good shape.
Yeah, they're in good shape.
Yeah.
And how did these things work exactly?
Well, they were attached to the top of the net. The clumps, the anchors, were attached to the bottom of the net. So they kept the net up on the surface of the water.
So this was the top, the big pieces of concrete were the bottom, and the net was
in between.
In between.
Yeah.
And
Supported
these
the
things
net.
are historic right now. There are only 2 of them left that we know of. They've got 2 of them stacked out here, and that's about it.
Oh, you better hang on to them.
Yeah, because I'm sure when you all were here, you didn't think these would ever be historic, did you?
Not really. Not really.
Fellas, what was this base called?
It was called the Naval Net Depot.
That's not a very exciting name. It was just called a Net Depot.
Net Depot.
They had a nickname, Hates Concentration Camp.
Oh, well, was this good duty or bad duty out here? I would think this would be great duty.
It was hard work.
It was a lot of work, but it was good. It was good duty.
Backbreaking
Good
work.
people.
Okay, now where would this work take place? Was
Right
this
there.
where it was, right here?
Right there.
So this whole area.
You see those little black dots out there?
Uh-huh.
At one time they were holes in the ground, and there were pipes stuck in there, and that's where we wove the net back and forth through the pipes to form the net, to make the big mesh.
So all the net making was done out here.
Yeah.
And then how did you get the nets to the boats to take them out into the harbor?
We rolled it up and brought it over to the edge of the breakwater.
All right, let's walk over here. What were these big poles sticking out of the...
That was a pier. There was a pier ran out here all the way.
It was decked over.
So
Oh,
the
decked
boat
over.
would just... The tender would just come right up here to the pier
We'd pick it up here,
and take the net
right off the wall here.
and put it on the tender, and
Yeah.
then it would go out into the bay and lay...
It would go in the water and they'd tow it. They would tow it out. They didn't put it on the tender.
Wow, this is all... The tender is such a strange-looking ship. It had these 2 prongs coming out.
They held the cable to lower all this weight that was out there. And that was their duty. They were built for one thing. They had a great big winch on it, fore and aft, and they handled the nets.
So this area would have been full of activity.
Yes.
I mean, how many guys were based here?
Joe, how many?
400.
Over 400?
Over 400,
Really?
plus officers. 60 officers and about 460 enlisted men.
And it was constant making nets, loading nets, and laying nets.
Right.
Right.
Well, we're ending up our adventure here in the Bachelor's Officers' Quarters, the old BOQ. The irony of it is there's not an officer amongst you all. Y'all never made it up this far, did you?
Never got here.
First time you've ever been in the building.
First time.
Only got up here with a mop.
And we have come to an amazing room. I guess I should explain why we're holding this bottle of beer here. This was obviously a bar here for the officers. And when you came up here and we looked at these walls, we saw these amazing drawings on the walls. And Joe, you know about these drawings.
Well, I really don't know about the drawings. I know Bud Whitney, who was a talented artist in our group, a seaman, carpenter mate Stryker. He did our logo for the
we have it right here.
Called Nellie, and that was because Nellie was the one that was going to wrap the net around the Japanese submarine.
An octopus here. So
The
he
octopus. He
did
did that.
Was this kind of the drawing for the, didn't you say you actually had this on your uniforms?
No,
I never did, no.
we did have patches made, but they wouldn't let us sew them on the uniform.
Okay, so you put them on the menu and other
Put 'em on the
things.
menu and other things.
Newspaper.
But the cartoon work in this sanctuary,
Officer's sanctuary.
Officer Sanctuary, is really something. I knew he had a lot of talent, but this is terrific.
And what happened to him?
He ended up going to sea, like most of us did, and practically all of us did over a period of time. And he went on a minesweeper, and he was killed in the South Pacific. The minesweeper that he was on struck a mine.
And his name again?
Bud Whitney.
Well, let's look at some of Bud's work, because this is a tribute to what he did. Here is the Inshore Patrol, the Tiburon Tuxedo Esquire 40. I'm not sure what all that means. I know what this means. Here is a minesweeper, M-E-I-N, minesweeper. Here is a submarine with Japanese with a face on it. So obviously here is the sub-tender attacking the Japanese submarine.
No.
And look what we got over here. Mine layer, scouting force, battle force, sporting goods. This is a good one over here. Come on over here, fellas. Tiburon Stair. And here's a heavy cruiser and a light cruiser. Now this is what you guys did to pass the time when you were stationed here, right?
Yeah, but only the officers could see this.
Isn't this amazing that this survived? This is like a bit of World War II graffiti that has survived and somehow or another wasn't painted over the years.
Really, it's surprising. So it's really nice to see, gratifying to see.
Yeah,
And
now,
I
you
wish-
never saw it either.
No, I never seen it. They're supposed
Yeah,
to take
it'd be nice if Bud Whitney's family could see this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, it's been saved, it's been preserved, it's part of the history of this wonderful place of the period when it was the Sub-Net Depot. Howard, thank you. This is the fellow who took us all the way back to when it was a cod factory. Did you know this place used to be a cod factory?
no, I didn't. Cod?
Yeah.
They used to dry and pack cod here.
Oh.
Yeah, but long before you got here.
Yes.
Here's our World War II contingent right here, our Korean War contingent right here.
Yeah.
This has been a wonderful step back in time. This piece of land here on the Tiburon Peninsula that has so many layers of interesting history to it. Howard, I would think off the top of my head that not many people, even those who live here in Tiburon, know all of these layers of history, do
I'm
they?
sure there are new layers coming to the light all the time.
Yeah.
As
Just
we
like
got
you
to-
found out
right.
about the cod,
Yeah,
and you had never heard the World War II story.
Well, no, there were some pretty good ones.
Yeah, so history is all around us. It's hidden, it's tucked away here in this little cove here near the city of Tiburon on this peninsula across the bay from San Francisco. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing your stories with all of us. And as we close, let's take one more look out the window of the old BOQ at this, well, what's left of the base today as it sits down there below us, full of history.
As a demonstration of actual defense methods practiced by our Navy, a class in torpedo net stringing goes into action. Heavy rings woven to buoys and anchor clumps are towed into the rough waters of the San Francisco harbor area. Balls attached to the nets are 4 feet in diameter and weigh nearly 700 pounds each. These metal nets are strung across harbor entrances to protect ships from torpedo attack by enemy submarines. Here, the net tender Catalpa sets the net for target practice, and it's all ready to withstand the shock of a torpedo. The sturdy net, weighing many tons, snares the torpedo, halting its deadly course to the potential target. Preparedness, watchword for defense.
Okay, as we end our adventure, we've hooked back up with Steve. Steve, we have had a wonderful day here today. We've learned a lot about what went on this little piece of land here, and right now you have brought us out in a boat, out in the water here, to do what?
Well, this is one aspect of our research here at the Romberg Tiburon Center. Earlier I was speaking to you from shore, where we have our laboratories and our classrooms, but fortunately for us, part of our work entails coming out to sea and actually collecting the animals and making measurements on the environment out here. So I'm out here with a couple of my students. Tammy's operating the boat here, and Tony's making a net haul with the plankton net.
Well, this is very interesting because what you're doing is continuing just another chapter in the history of this place.
Well, that's exactly right. As I've said earlier, the Tiburon Center's been here since '78. It's a site with a very, very rich history, and we're glad to be able to be moving forward and taking this mission into the future.
You are just continuing that proud history. This is another chapter in a wonderful book of California history that has been written right here. All of these fine examples, not only of history, but of California's gold. Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and I sure hope you enjoyed this adventure. If you'd like to see it again or share it with your family or friends, or perhaps donate a copy to your local school or library, it's available on video cassette and on DVD. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727, and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.